There's a kind of tiredness that even 8 hours of sleep can't touch. A heaviness that doesn't sit in your muscles, but somewhere deeper, somewhere quieter. It's the exhaustion you carry in the parts of yourself no one ever sees. The parts you keep hidden behind a practiced smile, a steady voice, a life that looks fine from the outside. This is not the tired that sleep solves. It's the tired of constantly holding yourself together. It's the tired of being okay for everyone else. It's the tired of fighting battles no one knows you're fighting. You wake up, you move, you function, but inside, something feels dimmed, drained, stretched thin. Like you're surviving the day, not living it. And the hardest part? You can't point to one big reason. It's just this quiet, invisible weight that keeps growing, a kind of exhaustion that whispers, "I don't know how much longer I can keep pretending like this is fine." There's a collapse that doesn't happen all at once. It doesn't look dramatic. It doesn't look like breaking. It looks like tiny moments, small unspoken drains, that slowly chip away at you until one day you wake up and realize you're running on fumes. Because it was never one big event. It's thousands of tiny cuts. The disappointments you swallowed, the arguments you avoided, the pain you minimized, the responsibilities you took on because no one else will. The nights you said "I'm fine," even when your chest felt heavy. The times you held your tongue to keep the peace. The moments you kept showing up for others while silently disappearing from yourself. This is the kind of exhaustion that builds quietly. It grows in the spaces where you stayed strong when you should have been allowed to fall apart. It grows in the silence where you suppressed emotions because you didn't want to be a burden. It grows every time you choose endurance over honesty with yourself. And the truth is, none of this makes you weak. It makes you human. You didn't collapse suddenly, you've simply been carrying far more than anyone ever realized. And recognizing that isn't failure. It's the first moment your pain finally becomes valid. What you're feeling isn't just in your head. There is a real, measurable psychology behind this kind of exhaustion, a biological shift that happens when your mind has lived in survival mode for too long. Under chronic stress, the brain begins to rewire itself. The amygdala, the part responsible for detecting danger, becomes overactive. Your body starts operating as if everything is a threat, even the smallest tasks. And when the brain believes you're constantly under pressure, it redirects its energy from growth to survival. This is where dopamine depletion begins. Dopamine is the chemical that makes life feel rewarding, that spark that turns effort into motivation. But when stress becomes your default state, your dopamine response weakens. Things that once brought joy now feel flat, distant, muted. Psychologists call this state anhedonia, the inability to feel pleasure. It's not sadness, it's emptiness. It's the sense of being alive, but disconnected from the parts of life that used to make you feel human. So if you've been wondering why even simple things feel overwhelming, why your energy feels gone before the day even starts, why joy feels like a language you used to speak, this is why. Your mind isn't failing you. It's protecting you. It's just been in survival mode for far too long. There's a certain kind of exhaustion that shows up in people who've spent their whole lives being the strong one, not because they wanted to be, but because life never gave them permission to be anything else. People who feel this kind of tiredness are rarely weak. In fact, they're usually the helpers, the peacekeepers, the ones who hold the family together, the ones who stay calm when others fall apart, the ones everyone turns to but rarely check on. This is high-functioning exhaustion. You look stable on the outside, but inside you're carrying emotions you never had the space to process. You support everyone else's storms while quietly drowning in your own. And the burden of being the strong one is this. You get so used to surviving that no one notices when you're barely holding on. You learn to hide your hurt, to smile through heaviness, to push through days that should have broken you. But here's the truth, no one says out loud. People like you don't get tired because you're fragile. You get tired because you've been unbreakable for far too long. And recognizing this isn't weakness, It's finally seeing who you truly are. A strong soul who deserves a place to rest. There comes a point where life doesn't feel painful. It just feels empty. Not dramatic, not chaotic, just quietly hollow in a way that's hard to explain. It's the fatigue that comes from living the same day over and over. Wake up, work, scroll, sleep, repeat. A routine that once felt normal slowly becomes a loop you can't escape. A cycle that keeps turning even when you no longer feel connected to any of it. This isn't hopelessness. It's directionlessness. A drifting, a sense that you're moving but not going anywhere. That you're alive but not really living. Psychologists call this meaning fatigue, a slow erosion of purpose that makes everything feel heavier than it should. It's not that your life is bad. It's that nothing in it feels like yours. You're doing what you're supposed to do, what you've always done, but deep down, something feels misaligned, like you've outgrown a version of yourself you're still pretending to be. And when life loses its why, even the smallest tasks feel draining. Not because you're weak, but because your soul is quietly asking for something real, something aligned, something that feels like a reason to stay awake in your own life. What if the exhaustion you're feeling isn't a sign that you're failing, but a sign that you're finally waking up? You're not broken, you're misaligned. Something in your life no longer fits the person you're becoming, and your mind is trying to tell you in the only language it has left: fatigue. Because exhaustion isn't always collapse. Sometimes it's communication. Sometimes it's your inner self whispering, "I can't keep living this way." This kind of tiredness isn't about giving up. It's about outgrowing old versions of yourself. Old routines, old identities, old expectations that no longer match who you truly are inside. Your mind isn't shutting down. It's waking up to the truth. It's pushing you toward alignment, toward honesty, toward a life that feels real again. This is not the end of your strength. It's the beginning of your clarity. The moment where survival ends and self-awareness begins. Realignment doesn't happen in a dramatic moment. It happens slowly, almost quietly, in the soft spaces where your nervous system finally stops bracing for impact. Where your body, for the first time in a long time, starts to believe that it's safe to exhale. It begins with tiny flashes of aliveness. An unexpected laugh. A song that hits a part of you thought was gone. A morning where the light feels softer instead of harsh. These aren't miracles, they're signals. Signals that your mind is shifting out of survival mode and into something gentler. This is where all moments return. Not the dramatic, cinematic kind, but the small, almost invisible ones. The way the wind moves through the trees. The warmth of a cup in your hands. The rare moment where you feel present instead of numb. Your nervous system slowly begins to soften. The constant tightness loosens. The noise inside you quiets just enough for you to feel something again. Even if it's subtle, even if it's fleeting. And in these tiny moments, life begins to reconnect with you. Not all at once, and not perfectly, but gently, like the first light after a long night, reminding you that you're still here, and that a part of you is finally beginning to wake up. Real healing doesn't begin with huge life changes. It begins with quiet honesty, the kind you whisper to yourself when no one else is listening. Start by noticing what drains you. Noticing, not judging. Pay attention to the people, routines and roles that leave you feeling emptied, and the moments, however small, that make your shoulders finally drop. Your nervous system is always telling the truth. You just have to slow down enough to hear it. Then release the impossible standards you've been carrying. The pressure to always be composed, productive, unshakable. You don't have to perform strength anymore. You don't have to pretend you're okay just because you're used to being the one who keeps everything together. Allow yourself to reconnect with the needs you've buried. Rest when your body asks. Say less when your heart is tired. Choose honesty over emotional endurance. Choose gentleness over proving something to the world. These aren't life hacks. They're small acts of returning, tiny moments where you stop abandoning yourself. And with every honest step, something inside you slowly begins to thaw, soften, and awaken again. When meaning begins to return, it doesn't arrive loudly. It shows up quietly, like a soft spark reminding you that life can feel different than survival. You start noticing that the moments which give you energy aren't the ones you force yourself through, but the ones that feel aligned with who you truly are. Because real energy doesn't come from pushing harder. It comes from living in a way that matches your values, not your obligations. From choosing what feels honest over what looks impressive. From doing things that make you feel real, not performative. Slowly, purpose begins to rebuild itself inside you, not as a grand mission, but as small signals. A conversation that feels nourishing, a decision that feels true, a moment where you finally breathe without guilt. And that's the rebirth of meaning. Not dramatic, not perfect, but quietly powerful. A reminder that you weren't tired because life was empty. You were tired because you were living out of alignment. Now you're finding your way back. If you've been feeling this quiet heaviness, this invisible exhaustion, remember what it truly means. It means you finally stopped running on autopilot. You finally paused long enough to hear yourself. And in that pause, something powerful begins to shift. Because being tired isn't the end of your story. It's the moment your heart whispers the truth you've ignored. Something in my life needs to change. Not because you're weak, but because you're ready for something real. Look back for a moment at the routines that drained you, the silence you carried, the strength you performed just to get through the day. Those were survival chapters, not your final ones. And maybe being tired of existing isn't a failure. Maybe it's the first honest step back to yourself. The beginning of the life your soul has been quietly asking for.